wings curved forward, they were evil, with the wings curved back, that they weren't evil. So
You
we
mean the
don't need to.
horns?
Yeah,
The
the horns. The
horns,
horns. Yeah, the
not the
horns. Sorry.
wings.
The horn. I inhaled gasoline fumes earlier today. It was a bad day. But okay, it was a bad day. But anyway, so yeah, the horns. So we don't need to retread that. But the philosophy of designing gargoyles, you've created a species, and the different looks, the anatomy, especially since these gargoyles look very different than the ones that we've seen up until now. But Jennifer, what are your thoughts?
I used to draw like all sorts of weird creatures um, as a kid, and the wings always were just very clunky looking and stuff. So I just latched onto the wing thing when gargoyles came out. Absolutely loved the design on them. Um, Loved the little fingers at the end of the wing, tips of the wings and stuff. And I've put that in so much of my art since then.
Yeah, and that was basically a bat thing. You
Yeah.
know how the bats have their little claws at the end, and
See, I had been doing like trying to do like the whole finger thing, like the like real bats, and it just looked.
yeah, I don't know if we ever did
I
that,
liked the smoothing out. It was streamlined. It was clean. It was it was fun.
but the original ones, I always thought of them as kind of dragon people, dragon somewhere between humans and dragons, and Goliath. When I remember when I saw the first animation, I was pretty amazed that Goliath had hair like a person would, which is great because you've got to see it flowing in the wind as he's flying. But to me, it was always like a crest, like a triceratops hard thing. But those are things that just naturally evolved. And like Superman's cape, it was a good way of making movement in those characters when they were moving.
All right, so this is for both of you, but Greg Weisman, why does the London clan look so different from the gargoyles we've met up until now?
Well, we had discussions about this, although this mostly was my mania, but a lot of gargoyles, and I mean literal gargoyles in the real world, in England look like heraldic animals. Unicorns, lions, griffins, boars, stags. And I thought, well, let's extrapolate. Let's justify that. And I didn't think at the time much in terms of the science of it all. That's something that's become more interesting to me as we've had various conventions and we do panels on gargoyles biology and culture and stuff like that. But at the time, I was just thinking, this will look cool.
I feel like it also like weaves them into the mythology and lore of the whole area.
So we were big on trying to incorporate multiple mythologies, multiple legend cycles, and that kind of thing. And so, when we got around, we'll talk about this down the road, but when we got around to seeing a clan in Japan, we were inspired by Tengu. When we got around to doing a clan in Mesoamerica, we thought about winged serpents and stuff like that. And we still we want them still to feel like they're part of the species. So the basic structure tends to be the same. But yeah, let's lean into a gargoyle that looks like a lion or a unicorn or a griffin. And that was just a lot of fun for us. And I think helped increase the scope of the series. I mean, again, part of the world tour was part of the intent of the world tour was to increase the scope of the series, to make a fuller universe out of what we were doing. And specifically, this was another way to attack that. And again, just also looked really cool.
Yeah, speaking as a viewer, at first I raised an eyebrow when I saw those designs the first time I watched M.I.A., but then I grew to really like the characters so much throughout the course of the episode, especially Griff, that by the time it was over, I didn't care that they looked so radically different. This is what they looked like. I enjoyed it. Jen, what do you think of their designs?
I liked seeing new different kinds of wings. Una's having hooves, like that was it was just I thought it was fun. I understood the heraldry behind it, and I just thought it was a fun, interesting take on how so much of like it was just I liked how it put them in the history of London.
Agreed. And before we dive into discussing the story beats of the episode, there's one other thing I do think we need to address. We mentioned him earlier, Sir Douglas Bader, a real historical figure and a very colorful and interesting person. I'm not gonna lie, since more people have learned about him and some of his takes, some people thought his presence kind of undermined the message because yeah, he was a World War II war hero and he did some great things. He was knighted for his services to the disabled, but he was also kind of, based on what we've read, a racist bigot who supported apartheid.
Yeah, I didn't know that back in the day. I mean, I met Sir Douglas. I actually went to Disneyland with him when I was a kid. I mean, long before the show. My dad was specifically a Spitfire and Hurricane aficionado, and met Sir Douglas in London and at the RAF Museum outside of London, and they became friends. And my dad's politics obviously aren't in line with what Sir Douglas's must have been. And so I just knew him as this really interesting guy who,
War hero.
Legs in a plane crash before the war, learned to walk again on two artificial legs, and they wouldn't let him fly again because guy has no legs. His point was, what do I need legs for? I don't have wings either. And so he eventually got them to let him fly. And he was, without a doubt, for his other faults of the time and whatever, I'm not trying to excuse them, but he was, without a doubt, a hero of the Battle of Britain. I mean, just he was. Unless, you're rooting for the Nazis, he was a hero. And I obviously knew him decades after that. But he and his wife came to California and we all went to Disneyland. And
that's what you do when you visit people in California.
Right. So we went to Disneyland and, he was shot down and put in a German prisoner of war camp. He escaped. He was recaptured, put in a German prisoner of war camp. He escaped again. So when they caught him the second time, they took his legs away so that he made it harder for him to escape. He was an amazing guy. Now, after the fact, long after the show aired, you do further reading and you find out some of his statements and you just, it saddens me that he thought that way. It doesn't change my view of the man I met. Well, it does change my view of the man I met, but it doesn't change what he accomplished during the Blitz. I mean, that still is an amazing story. He was an amazing man. He did good things for the right people. And then he had some opinions that I wish he didn't have, but that's life, I guess. I think it's okay to celebrate the heroics that were part of who he was and acknowledge, the pieces that we don't care for. No one was talking about that back then. And again, as Greg mentioned earlier, it was a pre-internet age, so you weren't